Big bank CEOs getting ready for a grilling on Capitol Hill this week. The CEOs of Bank of America, J.P. Morgan, Citigroup, Goldman Sachs, Wells Fargo, and Morgan Stanley are set to testify tomorrow before the Senate Banking Committee and the House Financial Services Committee on Thursday. They are expected to face tough questions as they posted record profits during the pandemic, and there are new regulations on the horizon, including sharing your bank account flows, the money in and out, with the IRS directly. Joining me right now is Odeon Capital Group Chief Financial Strategist Dick Bove. Also joining the conversation all morning long, Dagan McDowell and Steve Forbes. Great to see you, Dick. Thank you so much for being here. I want to talk about cryptocurrency and the dollar versus what's going on in China. But, Dick, let's start first with these hearings. What are you expecting the CEOs to face this week as they testify on the Hill? And what about that story of Joe Biden wanting to give tens of billions of dollars to the IRS so that the IRS can catch more revenue in your bank account? They want direct surveillance. They want the banks to provide the look into your bank accounts by the Treasury. Your thoughts?
Well, I think the biggest issue that they're going to face is the question as to why they're not lending more money. In other words, as the economy is trying to recover, as stimulus is being created, as money is being created by the Fed, banks are actually seeing a decline in the amount of loans that they're making to the economy. Now, of course, the bankers are going to argue that that's not their fault. Nobody wants to borrow the money. But the fact is, I think that's going to be one of the issues. I think this arch-egos situation is another big one, because no one expected that the banks would not know what the activities of one of their clients was, and I think that will be explored. I think the government has always wanted into the bank data on individual accounts. The banks have always fought back against it, and to this point, the government has not gotten in to the fashion that they want, and I doubt that they ever will. But there are other issues. Diversity is another one that they'll be asked about. How many women are likely to be presidents of banks? That question will be asked again. So these hearings will be very interesting.
But by the way, Dick, before we move on to the dollar, do you expect the regulatory environment to get tighter for the major banks? Do you think this is a Congress, this is an administration that wants to have more control over the financial services sector?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, neither Republicans nor Democrats really like banks a whole heck of a lot. And the fact is that the Democrats are taking a look at what was done over the past 4 years under the Trump administration, and there are things that they want changed. They want more regulation, certainly in the cryptocurrency area. They want more regulation in terms of, family offices. They want more regulation in terms of simply, greater transparency in terms of the information that the banks are providing. So, yeah, I think there'll be a lot more regulation.
Dick, let me move on to something that you've been covering so closely, and I know you've done a lot of work on the growing threats to the U.S. dollar and its dominance. This is a perfect day to talk about it, particularly since, given what happened overnight, you had overnight the China CSI index, the 300 top companies there, up the most since July, up better than 3% overnight, as overseas investors purchased $3.5 billion worth of A shares in China. With links through Hong Kong. It was the most ever. The Chinese yuan strengthened 20 basis points against the dollar just overnight, strongest level since June of 2018. Tell us what you're doing and what you've seen in terms of China and Russia taking on the dollar, putting the U.S. on the defensive, Dick.
Well, I think it was clear that about 7, 8 years ago, China and Russia made a deal to break the dollar. And it wasn't, a simple, set of ideas. It was well thought out. I mean, for example, China and Russia right now are acquiring a lot of gold. They both mine, the two biggest gold miners in the world. Yes. And they're taking time to basically lend money around the world. China has now loaned 140 countries money. And they're getting a lot back for those loans. In other words, there's a tiny country called Djibouti, which is, where Africa and Yemen almost come together. There's $1 billion U.S. Air Force base there. China has loaned that little tiny country, which has less than 1 million people, over 100% of their GDP. What they got as a result is they now have the first if you will, on the soil China military base located in Djibouti, right beside the American base. And in order to get to the American base, you got to go through the port, which China controls. The country of Ecuador basically owes supposedly $11 billion to the Chinese. What are the Chinese getting for it? 90% of the oil output of Ecuador goes to China. But far worse than that, if Ecuador misses a payment, China has the right to take any, if you will, natural resource from Ecuador and keep it for China. So Ecuador, in essence, has become a China colony. So basically, through the use of their financial system, through making these loans, and the Kiel Institute estimates that 6% of the world's GDP is now oriented toward paying back China on its debt. As a result of making these loans, China is getting enormous power over countries all around the world.
Absolutely, Dick, and I'm really glad you mentioned this because this is a subject that people don't understand as well. You've explained it really well. I'm glad you raised Djibouti. I pinpointed Djibouti really more than 5 years ago. Devin Nunes raised the red flag that the CCP was building military bases right near American military bases and right on ports, and that's what they did in Djibouti. It's really important to point out Djibouti. Once again, you are spot on. We'll be watching this because this is one of those areas that the U.S. needs to stay competitive in, and China is very focused on overtaking the United States on currency as well as so many other things. Dick Bove, thanks so much. A lot of implications here. We've got to continue talking about this. We'll have you back soon to connect the dots further. Thank you, Dick.